That's so sad. Xavier, play Despacito.
That sounds doable. Give me a sec.
Arriving at Retrospect. Retrospect Station. Doors will open on the left.
Welcome back, passengers, to Retrospect Station, the show where I show you just how colorful life can be. I'm your host, Elizabeth Dean, and last week we talked about bugs and how much I hate them, and how much I hate having them in my house. And so I have updates for you. First of all, yes, I did actually play Despacito when I said that. That was not a lie. It actually does do that. But just, I want to, before I even get into this episode today, I want to get into some updates. I did say last week that this episode would be episode plus more. And so this is the plus more. I have some announcements. The first is that the first season of the show is ending on June 18th. June 18th will be the last episode for season 1. And then I will return on July, what date will it be? July 9th? So we'll have season 2, brand new episode on July 9th. So it's going to be a 2-week break because I need that for planning and stuff. The second announcement is on the topic of insects. I just did the episode saying I don't want to see earwigs in my house. I would just much rather see them outside. Really don't want to see ants in my house. And then this past week, I had ants in my house. And I had to call the ant manager, and he managed my ants. And now there aren't ants any more ants in my house. That's that update. You know, you speak of the devil and the devil appears. The third update announcement thing is I regularly write poetry and prose about the death cult that is capitalism. And it is regularly anti-capitalist stuff that I will write. And if ever you wanted a book of anti-capitalist, here we go kind of poetry, I would recommend looking for the anthology that came out last month in May called Capitalism is a Death Cult. And it's published by Sunday Mornings at the River Press. And you will find 2 pieces of mine in there. One of them is called There Is No Money. And the other one is called The Woodrunner's Sons. Now, those are just my 2, but the entire anthology is a wonderful piece of writing, and I highly recommend picking it up if you can. It's available on Amazon, I believe, and potentially also on their website, which is just sundaymorningsattheriver.com. Or you can find them on Instagram with the exact same name. And I would recommend picking that up. If you have the ability to have that in your life, please do have that anthology in your life. It is a wondrous work of art and highly necessary in today's political climate, economic climate, in today now. That's announcement number 3. Announcement number 4 is those 2 weeks that after I've done the last episode for this season, those 2 weeks of a break, I will not just be sitting on my butt the entire time. And while I will be planning some stuff for Retrospect Station, my announcement is that I'm going to be planning some stuff for other things too. So on this podcast, I talk about things that have happened to me and things that I can recall from my past, and then I reflect on them. But this is not the extent of everything that I do. And the extent of everything that I do is also not just writing anti-capitalist poetry pieces. I love playing video games. And as I mentioned on one previous episode, my laptop was stolen. I think it's pretty safe to confirm now at this point, my laptop is gone. It was just stolen by a technician and it's gone into the ether, and he probably sold it for parts, and it's just not findable. I haven't had an update back from the police station, but I don't think I'm going to get an update back. So it's just gone. To deal with that, however, I have replaced it with an entire new desktop computer, which is something I've always wanted to do. And I've always wanted to have like a proper functioning desktop computer that I could like drag and drop parts out of as time went on and it aged. And now I finally have that. So I will be returning to playing video games. Why on earth would I announce this to you, you might think? Well, for those who do not know, one of my faithful listeners I do know knows this about me. I have a YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is not the Retrospect Station YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel called Serotonon. That is Serotonon, because just like an electron or a proton, a serotonin is a particle, a fundamental particle of happiness. Yes, I came up with that myself, and I'm very proud of it. Hush. And on there, I play video games. And I really want to play video games that are the old ones that I grew up with, some of the classics, not the ones with bad graphics, mind you, because I'm somebody who doesn't really tolerate really crappy graphics very easily. They have really good visuals. The stories are very robust. And in today's climate of things where there's this kind of push for media and art to just be viral and sellable, but not actually meaningful a lot of the time, there's less high quality games and adventures and media than there used to be. So I wanted to like bring those back, highlight them, and also play them. So in those 2 weeks, I will be prepping for that. And somewhere, I hope in the second half of 2025, you will be seeing that. I will announce it when it happens. Yeah. So today's episode, thank you for putting up with my little spiel there at the beginning. Today's episode, so I was in the process of making some music-y stuff and dabbling in the instruments of the world recently. And I got to thinking about something. I'm not a fan of AI. I've never really been a fan of Gen AI, specifically Gen AI, generative AI. AIs that like scan for diseases and help doctors make better decisions because it uses math to kind of predict certain things or show certain patterns. That's great AI. We should continue to be using that. That's a good thing. Generative AI, which is its only intention is to replace human labor and skill with a knockoff version of the technical capacity to be a person so that a wealthy person can access skill without having to try and get skill. That's really the only point of Gen AI. I don't like. And recently, about a year and a half ago, Spotify put in an AI DJ whose name is Xavier. You heard me call his name at the beginning. Typically, he goes by DJ X on the phone. Yeah, by the way, just so we're here, I'm showing you my phone. This is a door. My friend's door. She threw away her door. Anyway, I don't like him. He started off as being a good tool to kind of shuffle things in a very random way. Like it was akin to Apple's Genius Shuffle when it first came out, where it was a smart shuffle that gave the appearance of being a sort of randomized selection of songs that you listen to. And in DJ X's case, at the very beginning of its existence, it was a tool that grabbed some of the songs you listened to and some of the songs you didn't listen to and some other stuff that fit your categories very well. And it was really well adjusted to be able to do that. And then once their AI DJ took off on Spotify, Spotify got a little bit AI trigger happy, for lack of better words, and fired a lot of their technical staff. So the people who were responsible for setting genres, they fired all of them and they let the AI do it instead. The AI is horrible at it and cannot make a genre to save its life and cannot categorize songs in genres to save its life. So the most recent, what's it called? Spotlight, or the look back, the thing that, comes at the end of the year. Here's what you listen to, whatever. It was horrible for 2024. And many people just didn't click into it. I didn't click into it because I looked at it briefly and I was like, this is horrible. I don't even need to see the end of this. And around the same time, DJ X became utterly useless. He kept cycling back the same songs that you've always listened to back to you. And then he would say, now I'm going to mix things up and give you blah, 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 blah. And it would just literally be the song that you had on repeat last week and a bunch of other songs from last week. He wouldn't really extend out of your immediate music taste. And he really hasn't improved since then. They've tried to do some changes, I can tell, but he hasn't improved. So I got to thinking, what happened? Like, I just wanted to reflect on how we listen to music has changed drastically. And by that, I mean how we listen to music in its format and also the style and also our behaviors have changed remarkably in how we listen to music. And I wanted to kind of highlight how we used to listen to music and then where we're at now. So a little brief progression thing. This is a short episode because I'm running out of time for the room, as always. So me personally, how did I grow up listening to music? My dad has a turntable, like the whole table, for a record player. So he has like the whole record player stand, the two big speakers, and then on top of it has the record player. And I grew up hearing my dad's records, and it was all sorts of records from all sorts of very famous artists. The one that I remember most prominently was ABBA. Another one I remember prominently was, there was a Shania Twain record, I think. And so just a lot more older country and pop style artists. I think he had some classical stuff there as well. And I grew up just endlessly listening to his records. I think I may have figured out how to put one on at one point when I was very young. And so like I just became attached to this thing, to listening to music like this. And then on top of that, because when I was growing up, we had all sorts of media to listen to music on. We didn't just have records, but my parents came from an era of records. So my dad had records, and then my dad and my mom, they had cassette tapes, and we had a cassette player. And so I would listen to all forms of published music on either a record at home or a cassette player. And my dad had a boombox so that you could record things. And so like the turntable had a cassette thing attached with it. Like it was all one unit. I forgot the proper name for it. And so, for example, if you wanted to listen to music on the way to work or school or something, you could learn how to record it into a cassette and then bring it with you. So my dad would do that. He'd run the record player and run the cassette tape, and he'd be recording what the record player was playing into the cassette tape. And then he'd stop and pause it, change out the record, and he would make a mixtape. Quite literally, he would make a mixtape of the different songs from different records in the order that he wanted them to play. Literally the earliest version of a playlist. And then we would listen to it on the way to school. He would put it on the car, and we would have like 6-7 different cassettes in the car and cycle through them here and there. And so my life was full of music. And this is well before internet streaming for music. We also had CDs. CDs were not new, but they were semi-popular, and then they became pretty popular, and then they fell out of popularity. So CDs had a really short popularity chunk of the era. They took up a very small chunk of the era for music, because very quickly in the same vein, we went from CDs to iPods. So I'm jumping a bit. We would then buy CDs for new music, because they stopped selling cassettes quite a while into my childhood, and it was CDs. So we would buy CDs and put on the CDs in the car. One of the cars that we had at the time didn't have a CD slot in it. It was that old. So my dad would put the CD in the CD player at home that also had a cassette player tape thing and record songs from the CDs into the cassette tape, and then put them all in the car that only had the cassette tape thing. For context, for an image of how listening to music worked in this era, it was literally very MacGyver. If you wanted to hear something, you did it yourself. So we did this. My first CD was a Miley Cyrus CD. I think on one side was Hannah Montana. The other side was Miley Cyrus. It was like her debut album CD thing. And that was my first CD that I bought for myself. And when I bought it, at the same time, we had launched basically for the first time, the iPod Classic. And very soon after, the iPod Nano and the iPod Classic 2, like there was a second edition of it. To this day, I've never had an iPod Classic. I had a Nano. And my dream was always to have a classic, and I never had a classic, and they don't sell classics anymore, and I really would like to have a classic. I would give so many things just to see Apple sell brand new an iPod Classic again, like the beautiful metal casing with the little scroll wheel at the front and like this little screen, and you could just go from section to section. It was very plain, very cut and dry, very MP3 player style. And that was what we had in that era. We had MP3 players for younger, more tech-savvy people. And so now the project was getting music onto this block, downloading it into this device. So you'd hook it up to a computer, and you would run CDs, and you could transfer songs that were on the CDs. You could copy them into the MP3 player's file database using iTunes, or if it was a knockoff MP3 player, you could use like the regular file manager or whatever. So this became how I listened to music by the time I was 11 or 12. That was when I had my iPod. Shortly after that, and I should mention as well that along came the era of buying music in a digital format online. And you could buy it online as a file and download it into your MP3 player through iTunes Store or whatever. Or you could, the term was burn it on a CD. I don't know why it's burn. I think because it's a laser. But basically it copies these files into a blank CD. And I knew how to do that too. And I did that too. And you could put them in your CD player and it would work. So there was a very big like transitional using all of these different methods for interacting with music and having music with you. As soon as we got to the MP3 player section, everyone wanted to sell music like on these digital stores to reach a larger audience. And so they started doing just that. And with that, piracy started to ramp up. There was an era, there was always piracy. People would copy songs to CDs and make those mixtapes, but then they would sell them, and you're not supposed to, but they would. In the era of like mixing tapes and cassettes, they would. But it wasn't a large scale business and a large scale thing the way that digital media piracy became a huge thing. So now that the file is online, you can find the file. You could easily like get into your device in the file manager, find the file, and it's a file. It's just a sound file. The same way that this podcast has a sound file. It's just a sound file. You can email it, share it around, everything. And we didn't have the same kind of digital encryption that we did back then with a key and all of that. I think now such things could exist and do exist, but we didn't have it back then. So people would share these songs and not pay for them on platforms like LimeWire, Pirate Bay, missing another one, uTorrent, stuff like that. People would just share these things so that anyone could get their hands on them for free. And it was about to cripple the music market. So there was this weird, what's it called? There's this weird compromise that happened somewhere in 2013 or 14, where, I mean, YouTube always existed with music and music streaming, but no one wanted to have the video open all the time because the app would not stay open. If you locked your phone, it would also stop the music. So people didn't really do that. And it burned out your battery really quickly. So people would have these things downloaded to their phones, these pirated songs, whatever, download to this phone. And then you'd want more. And so you'd have to go and find another, like you'd again have to find that file or convert a YouTube video into an audio file. And there were so many different websites to facilitate all of this. And then along came streaming music. Spotify is one of the best known ones. Apple Music as well, because they came out on the market doing that to compete with Spotify. YouTube Music has done the same thing, kind of segmented their music so that they can compete with the streaming apps. And there is other streaming apps too. Excuse me, there's Amazon Music. Like these are all competitors with Spotify, but Spotify is known as the first, except Spotify was not the first. My first introduction to streaming music I have this distinct memory of me sitting in my room with my CD player that doubled as a radio. And I was listening to the radio, and then I was listening to a CD. And I was listening to the radio, and I was listening to a CD. And I was going back and forth, listening to whatever I wanted to. And then I was scrolling through the App Store, and I came upon an app, which I cannot remember the name of. I'm going to look it up. Music streaming app. It's an old app. Attention all passengers. We interrupt this programming to bring you a special announcement. Literacy is at an all-time low these days for reasons mainly outside of our control, and so I thought what better way to do my part than to bring you a word of the week. This week's word is holocaust. Yeah, I'm not mincing words this time. Holocaust is spelled Holocaust, Holocaust. And Merriam-Webster's dictionary, among other dictionaries, define it as a thorough destruction involving extensive loss of life, especially through fire. Another definition here says a mass slaughter of people. And so the definition includes both of these scenarios, both extensive loss of life and thorough destruction. And an example sentence of the word Holocaust would be, what Israel is doing in Palestine is considered a Holocaust. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Songza. That was what it was. Hold on. Was this it? Heck yeah, I found it. I found it. There was an old app called Songza that came before Spotify. Here's pictures of Songza. And when they first started, there were 3 options. That was it. It was you got in and it would be like, it's Friday morning or good morning or it's the evening. Play music for, and then you'd have options. It would be like reading, sleep, or something like that. Like there were 3 options, and then they expanded to 6 options. And the options were, what were they here? I have them here. Waking up with energy, coffee, waking up happy. They had many options. Like it would be based on what time of day you were in the app. So music for sleeping, music for nature music for sleeping, music for working late, music so the playlists were curated with certain types of music. Some of it was instrumental, some of it was just regular sung music with lyrics and whatever. A lot of it was not the most popular music out there. They were more like indie music mainly, but it was so intuitive. It worked so well. And then they went out of business. I think they don't exist anymore because Spotify came on the market and everyone migrated into Spotify from wherever else they were listening to music, because Spotify had all of the highly popular music too. They had contracts with the distributors to do that as well. So people moved away from Songza. Spotify also competed with Songza in the beginning because they had playlists exactly like that. Like you could scroll on Spotify and you'd find things that were like music for working, music for relaxing. And then the playlists had those names where it was like early morning coffee playlist, and like it was curated with a vibe and with intention and with feeling and characteristics because it was done by a real person. So people moved away from Songza and put them out of business. I would arguably love to see Songza come back. This took the decision making out of music for me without having to use an AI, and it was always good. And I could rely on the lists being shuffled well enough that it felt random. And they always added even more things into the app. They were always adding new music. It was like a nice democratizing platform for indie music. Now, Spotify, people can just kind of upload whatever if they go through certain distributors, and it's all good. But we introduced AI into how we handle music. And it's taken away some of this now. So we've gone all the way from record players all the way through to AI curated lists. And they've taken away the humanity out of music a little bit with how they deal with things. A lot, actually. Because I've gone back to some of those playlists. I had saved them. Some of them don't exist anymore. They're just gone. And the ones that do exist have been relabeled, rebranded. Cover art has been changed to be some AI generated thing, which they didn't need to. They just did it because they could. And they changed the font to be that one weird AI generated font that's really skinny and blocky and condensed looking. And I hate it. I see it so many places and I hate it. I know exactly where it came from and I hate it. Because it looks boring. It looks boring and tacky and like no love went into it. And then they changed the lists to be way shorter. And then they just kind of have whatever popular music at the time. And that curation disappeared because now we don't have people with music tastes and discernment and character and soul and thoughts and feelings curating and characterizing what these lists look like. Now we just have some machine, a pattern recognition machine, trying its best to synthesize something that aligns with what it thinks our patterns look like. We're not mechanical beings. We are very much nuanced things. We are predictable, but we're not predictable down to the last molecule. And AI kind of presumes that we are. There's not much in the way of figuring out how to humanize what's going on. People are saying, oh, we'll get better with time and whatever. Yeah, maybe. But what's the point at that point? Do I really want to hear something that a machine tried their best to guess that I might like? I don't want the machine to know me. I want a person to know me. I want a person to communicate and connect with. So, hey, if we want Songza to come back, I want Songza to come back. I would love to can I email the Songza people and be like, hey, let's do something about this? Because they could compete with Spotify. They really could. They could get the distribution rights and everything, and they could compete. They had a good, what's the word I'm looking for? They had a good architecture to what their app looked like and how their app functioned. It was different. I liked it. They should continue to exist. But yeah, I wanted to reflect on how music works. I myself am currently dabbling in some music, and I was exploring how music distribution works, how to get things on Spotify and other places. And it feels so metallic and vapid. It feels so capitalist. And I understand what artists must be feeling when it comes to sharing their music with people. So, yeah. Anywho, like I said, a short episode. I didn't really want to drag it out too much. That's really my take on how music listening was and felt. I'm kind of reverting back. If I could find an MP3 player and just listen to music on that, I really would. If I could try and isolate, everything happens in this one device, the phone. And I actually would be so down to isolate those functionalities into different objects again, because it separates your attention. If you're listening to music, you're listening to music. If you're listening to a video, you're watching a video, you're watching a video. If you are typing or doing something else, you're doing something else. It separates each of these objects. And while it is nice to have one utility device that does it all, it was also really nice to have a camera and an iPod and a phone. It was nice to have these separate things that you could choose to have with you if you wanted them or not. So, I mean, it would be nice to have options. Capitalism took away our options and then claimed that it gives us options, which is just a big lie. So, anywho, that's all for this week episode. Next week will be the last week. Next week will be the last week for season 1. It's going to be a nice, well thought out, a little bit scripted episode, only because I really want to get all my thoughts out in a certain order about it. And I've been trying to plan this one for a long time. So next week will be that one. And then I am going on break for 2 weeks. And keep an eye out on the YouTube channel called Serotonin. That's it. It's Serotonon. That's how you spell it. If there's only one channel like that, that's it. Is me. I will If you want to see me play video games, there will be video games. If you like what you hear and you want to continue supporting the podcast and help me have coffee, you can go to coffee.com/retrospect station. That is spelled ko-fi.com/retrospect station. And if you want to follow the podcast online, you can do so on Instagram and TikTok at Retrospect Station. And if you want to follow me online, you can do so on Instagram and TikTok at AstroAlex34. I almost got the whole thing right in one go. I am currently losing my voice and I can't tell why. Maybe it's because I've just been talking too much or whatever. Maybe I'm getting sick, but this is the end. Smooches. I love all of you. Mwah. Keep the ants out of your house.
Special thanks to the Mississauga Library Makerspace of Hazel McCallion Library. Without their resources, this show would not be possible.